Welcome everyone to the FCAN webinar, Community Partnership Schools, a holistic approach to help students become college ready. I am Kathy McDonald, Assistant Director for Network Partnerships with the Florida College Access Network, and I'm excited that you're all on joining us today. I hope you're feeling safe and sheltering in place and everyone's healthy where you're calling in from. I am super excited to welcome on our call today guest presenter Donnie Hale, who is Assistant Director of the University of Central Florida's Center for Community Schools. Donnie is a lecturer for the College of Community Innovation and Education and co-chair for the nationwide Community School Leadership Network. Hale oversees operations for the center, which includes services in technical assistance, training and development, and assessment and evaluation. His research focuses on race, equity, educational opportunity, college access, and human development. As co-chair of the Community School Leadership Network, Hale works with community school leaders across the country to expand community schools, build leadership capacity, strengthen local and community networks, and provide professional development for leaders and coordinators. Previously, Hale served for more than 5 years as director of the Education Effect, a university-assisted community school partnership. The partnership works to improve learning and life outcomes among students in Miami's urban core communities, including Overtown, Liberty City, and Little Haiti, by deploying resources from FIU, Miami-Dade Community Public Schools, and private donors. Also on our webinar today, I'm excited to welcome Robert Palmer. He serves as the University Assistance Coordinator for UCF's Center for Community Schools. In this role, Palmer is responsible for assisting schools as they collaborate with their college and university partners to develop mutually beneficial programs and services to impact students, families, and communities. Prior to joining UCF, Robert worked for the Orange County Public Schools as a college and career specialist, supporting students in developing their post-secondary plans. Before becoming a college and career specialist, he also worked as a guidance counselor and teacher. Born and raised in West Palm Beach, Florida, Palmer earned his bachelor's degree in social science education from Florida State University and his master's of education in counselor education from the University of Central Florida. Before we get started with today's presentation, a few housekeeping items. First, we welcome your questions. FCAN's ethos is all about us learning and sharing together, so please feel free to let us know what's on your mind. You can put your questions in the box that should be in your dashboard on the right side of your screen if you're viewing from a desktop computer. Second, if you can share what you're learning with us on social media, you can find FCAN on Twitter at FL College Access and at UCF_CCS. You can also find our guests on Facebook at UCF CCS as well. Please use the hashtag FCAN so we can find you. Now, for those of you who are new to FCAN's work, very briefly, the Florida College Access Network is the heart of a movement to ensure today's students are prepared for tomorrow's jobs. Our mission is to create and strengthen a statewide network that catalyzes and supports communities to improve college and career preparation, access, and completion for all students. Our vision is to see at least 60% of working age Floridians hold a high quality post-secondary degree or credential by the year 2025. We do our work in 3 primary ways. First, FCAN publishes research and data on evidence-based practices and policy opportunities to strengthen Florida's talent pool. Second, through our local college access networks that represent 82% of the state's population. These organizations are made up of community leaders who come together to create solutions and partnerships to support local talent development. And finally, through our statewide initiatives, FCAN coordinates 4 of them under the College Ready Florida banner that support students and school districts in helping students continue their education after high school. To get us started, we know you all are calling in from all over from lots of different organizations. So we'd love to do a quick poll so we can see what type of organization you are calling in from. So if you can just make your choice there between school districts, post-secondary education, college access and community organizations, philanthropy, or other. let us know who is joining us on the call today. Looks like we've got a lot of higher ed folks so far. Let's just give that another couple of seconds. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close that out. And as you all can see, we've got just shy of 40% are from higher ed, about a quarter are from college access and community organizations, about 15% from philanthropy, and then also from school districts. So thank you all. Appreciate you letting us know who's on the call. That gives our presenters an opportunity to share and cater some of their messages to you all. So with that, I am super excited to turn the floor over to Robert. Let me go ahead and change the screen. Robert, you should have the opportunity to share your screen now. Very good, I can see it. And with that, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Before starting, I want to make sure that I thank Kathy for not only the introduction, but also all the work that she does with FCAN. It's really appreciated. Once again, my name is Robert Palmer, and I'm the University Assistance Coordinator here within the UCF Center for Community Schools. And today, I'll be providing you with an overview of community partnership schools and how it has become a holistic approach to post-secondary readiness for our students. Now, as we go through the presentation today, you'll notice that we have the option to chat, and you can post any questions that you have during the presentation in that chat box. Myself, as well as Dr. Donnie Hale, will be monitoring the chat box. That way we can address any of those questions and provide any insight as you all are watching the presentation. As we work through the presentation today, we will aim to meet the goal of providing the context of community partnership schools and how they impact students, families, schools, and communities, leading to improved educational outcomes. We'll also work to achieve the following objectives. First, of informing you about community partnership schools model, and second, sharing the current impact of community partnership schools in the state of Florida. Now, before we dive into the presentation, I wanted to provide you with a brief overview of what we'll be covering today. So the first thing is going to be, what is a community school? We'll talk about a few of the mental models or approaches of community schools and what those look like. We will then share information about the University of Central Florida Center for Community Schools and our role within the state. We'll also provide you with a framework for community partnership schools through the model, as well as the pillars for community school success. And finally, we will share the impact of community partnership schools here within our state. With the outcome-driven world that we live in, we want to make sure that we show you the data tied to our local schools, as well as throughout the rest of the state, to highlight some of the successes that we've had so far. So what is a community school? A community school is both a physical place as well as a set of partnerships between a school and other community resources. Community schools bring together many partners to offer a range of supports and opportunities to students and families, using normally a central location, which is known as the hub, and often that is usually the school site. There are a few mental models and approaches to community schools nationwide. Now, all of these approaches aim to provide additional support and opportunities to students to meet some of the needs that they may have. I just want to highlight a couple of the models that are listed here on this slide. The first one I want to discuss briefly would be the University Assisted Community Schools approach. This was first implemented by the Netter Center at the University of Pennsylvania in 1992 to help address some of those issues in West Philadelphia. Now, I have to bring this up. Some of you may be familiar with Will Smith, who is an actor, in his role on the show Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. West Philadelphia is where he originally was from in the intro, if you've ever watched the show. And his mom sent him to Bel-Air to have better opportunities and a safer environment. So just kind of a pop culture reference to provide a little different context to that. Here in Florida, we implement the Community Partnership Schools model as our approach, which was co-founded in 2010 with Children's Home Society of Florida and Orange County Public Schools. Before discussing more about the Community Partnership Schools model, I want to share with you the center's role. Here within the center, our vision is to serve as a comprehensive resource for schools in Florida, across the nation, and around the world by offering technical assistance, a university-assisted partnership, training and development, assessment, and evaluation. Those are the 4 areas that we serve the field. Specifically, I want to highlight the assessment and evaluation piece. This is how we support sites in maintaining the fidelity to the model through a certification process. As we continue through the presentation today, I'll talk a little bit more about what that process looks like, as well as how we're able to support schools throughout that process as well. Now, what you'll see on this slide is a map of the state of Florida, as well as all of our community partnership schools. We have a total of 26 community partnership schools for this fiscal year, 2019 to 2020. As time has gone on, we have been able to expand our capacity due to legislative funding, allowing us to provide additional grants to community partnership schools throughout Florida. You'll notice different colors on the map, and I want to just provide you with a little bit of context as to what those colors represent. So the yellow represent our UCF certified community partnership schools. These are schools that have gone through the certification process and shown a level of fidelity to the model in order to meet certification requirements. The red represents our schools that are in the implementation phase. These are sites that are working towards effectively practicing the model. And last, we have our schools that are green, and those are schools that were recently funded as of this year. So in discussing the community partnership schools model, there's 4 main components that you can see here on this slide. You have your 4 core partners, and it can be more than 4 core partners, which usually actually are always a school district, your university partner, your nonprofit organization, as well as your healthcare partner. You have 4 dedicated staff positions. There's a distributive organizational structure, and then also the process of becoming certification eligible, which all sites are able to go through that process to ensure that they are implementing the model in the best way possible. With those 4 model components, there are also foundational principles that are key to community partnership schools, which are a long-term commitment to partnership. This is vital to creating impactful change, as it takes time to develop those healthy relationships to be able to collaborate effectively. Education first. This is that all partners are focused on providing support that has a positive impact on educational outcomes. It's important that all partners also have a culture of yes. So core partners are willing to work towards solutions rather than just providing a no based on the policies and procedures that they may already have in place with their organization. All partners need to make sure that they're working as one team, which means they're all working towards meeting the common goal, which is driven by the needs of the student and community. And that piece of it being needs driven is extremely important. The reason why we're all being pulled together as far as partners in the community partnership school model is to meet the needs of the students and the community. Now, as we look at the community partnership schools model, we want to always make sure we make a distinction between being a provider and being a partner. Some of the areas that I want to definitely address on this slide would be the aspect of responsibility. Being a provider means that you're responsible to your own organization and your organization's outcomes, while being a partner means that you're fully invested in the outcomes of the community school rather than just your organization. We also want to highlight commitment. Now, with the commitment, you're going to want to make sure that you are working not just within the commitment to the own cause of your organization, but also commitment all the way throughout your organization as far as meeting the goals of the community partnership school. So the way to kind of help support this, there is a cabinet level meeting, as well as meetings all the way down to the ops level, which would be your boots on the ground. And for each of those meetings, there's going to be a representative from each core partner that's going to be a part of those meetings to help ensure that there's commitment on all levels of the organizations that are involved. And then the last area I want to highlight would be support. So being a provider means that you're just getting support from the work within your own organization, while being a partner means that you're working within the partnership to access the resources of your partners to come together to really meet the needs of the students and community. On this slide, you can see the 4 pillars of community schools, which are going to be collaborative leadership, expanded learning, wellness supports, and then also family and community engagement. Now, with these 4 pillars, there are also the 4 dedicated positions that are aligned with each of these pillars. So every site will have a community partnership school director, and then 3 additional positions that will fulfill the role of meeting the need for expanded learning opportunities, wellness supports, and family and community engagement. Now, the first pillar that we're going to talk about, this is going to be collaborative leadership. This is key, as the focus of community partnership schools is pulling together all the different resources of the partners as a collective group, but there needs to be leadership throughout working towards the same cause, the same goal, which is meeting the needs of the students. So with collaborative leadership, it's not only focusing on one individual organization, it's focusing on the entire process of helping meeting the needs of the students at the school. So this is throughout every level of each organization. So you'll see that there's different meeting setups. So there's the cabinet level, which is going to be more so your 50,000 foot view, helping with the vision of the community partnership school to meet those needs. Then you have your executive cabinet committee as well, which is going to be a little bit smaller, but still working on that vision and focus. And then you have the operations team level, which is going to be your day-to-day operations. Now you'll notice that on this diagram we have here, you'll also see the school-based teams and personnel. That's extremely important because the community partnership school is a part of the school and not apart from the school. You'll commonly see that the community partnership school staff will serve on the administration or leadership team at a lot of our schools. And that's a way to really show that the community partnership school is really ingrained into what is going on at the school on a day-to-day basis. Now, Donnie, I know you have extensive experience on collaborative leadership and different techniques and ways that is really implemented to really impact community partnership schools. Do you have any thoughts that you want to share with our participants today?
Thank you, Robert. So I think to the point of collaborative leadership, we're always thinking about the idea of collective impact. How do we all work together for our common good to make sure that the operations of the community partnership schools are moving in a positive direction? So that means understanding what are needs of the community while also being able to communicate, convey, and provide consistent leadership. That means that you're working across and working with people to make sure that things are functioning at a high level, but it's also creating the idea that we can collaborate, that all voices matter, that you got to make sure that student voices, parent voices, community voices are all part of that decision making. And so I think to that point of collaborative leadership, we're always thinking about shared governance and that point of culture, because as culture and governance should be fluid, we want to make sure that all people are able to have a voice in that participation of that leadership model and structure. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Donnie. Appreciate it. Now, continuing to the next pillar, expanded learning time and opportunities. So a few examples of this would be tutoring, which that could be push-in tutoring. So tutors being able to go in during curriculum time within the classrooms, or pull-out tutoring, where they're able to take students outside the current class to provide them with additional support, even after school tutoring as well. Mentoring programs, specific clubs and organizations, as well as additional enrichment opportunities. Now, the examples I just mentioned, these opportunities also extend to workforce development as well. So engaging not only students from the K through 12 spectrum, but also some of your adult learners as well, which we'll talk about that more when we get to the family and community engagement pillar. Now, this expanded learning aspect is really important because it keeps the students engaged in the
Robert, we just lost your audio there. Robert, can you hear me?
Side, as far as what they're learning within the classroom during the school day. Can you hear me now?
It's blipping in and out. Do you want to try again?
Yes. Let's see if you can hear me
Okay.
now. If not, I'll
I
have
can
to
hear you.
call in.
Yep, I
Yes,
can
we
hear you.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, not sure what part we were able to get through, but just with expanded learning opportunities, it's really about making sure that we provide additional enrichment to students that allows them to really tie in what they're learning in the classroom outside of the school day as well. So moving on to wellness supports. With the wellness supports in place, this really allows a student to focus on their academic potential and really helps us focus on the whole child. So as all of you know, a lot of times the issues that students face extend beyond the school walls. And some of that is tied to healthcare. With wellness supports, a lot of our community partnership schools will provide additional mental health counseling. And this is all at the site of the school, in addition to primary healthcare, dental health care, health and nutrition education, as well as trauma-informed care and mental health awareness training for staff. And in today's day and age, we all know that's a really important piece of ensuring that our students are safe and able to focus on the academic side of being at school. So the wellness supports really provides a great way to make sure those wraparound services and the focus of the whole child is in place. And then the last pillar would be the family and community engagement. So this focuses on bringing families and the community into the school as partners in student success. Now, some of the ways that community partnership schools are able to do this is through using parent resourcing, whether that be through volunteers, family and parenting workshops. So providing workshops on the school campus to help assist families and parents with whatever the needs that they have in place, as well as classes including ESOL and GED classes to help them increase their educational attainment as well. Now here, we believe that quality implementation is the key to progress for any community school. And ongoing progress monitoring is essential to the growth of any community school. The UCF Center for Community Schools assesses and evaluates community partnership schools with a strengths-based certification process to ensure that the standards of community partnership school model are consistently implemented and maintained. Each standard has its own fundamental practices and then additional indicators allowing the field to really improve their work. So allowing them to really increase their capacity to be able to go out and meet the needs of their students and community. Now, with this model being consistently implemented and maintained across our community partnership schools, we have seen improved student educational outcomes with a far-reaching impact on families, schools, and the communities in which they serve. The community partnership schools model can lead all students being better prepared for post-secondary success by reducing obstacles and allowing the students to realize their full potential. So you'll see that, some of the things that we're going to be able to show you with our impact data is that there's been increased academic performance, really helping students meet the level that they need to achieve as far as their academics. There have been positive changes on school culture, and there's also been an increased overall lifelong success for education, employment, and health within the areas that are served by the community partnership school. Now, since we've gone over the context for community schools and the community partnership schools model, as well as the role of the center, we want to provide you with some of the data that really supports the impact of community partnership schools here within the state of Florida. So on that note, I'm going to introduce a person who really needs no introduction, our assistant director here within the center, Dr. Donnie Hale.
Robert, thank you, and thank you for being so kind with your words. Again, Robert, you've done a great job of definitely highlighting our work. Now, as we think about the impact of our community partnership school, the idea is always to make sure that students have what they need. We like to think of this as an equity strategy where we're deliberate and intentional to make sure that we're meeting students and families, as well as supporting the educators in the school and the community. And so as we think about some of the idea of impact, we want to make sure that we are are helping to improve access while reducing barriers. But I think the first thing, and if you can go to slide 19, Robert, is thinking about the idea of graduation rate. Since the establishment of community partnership schools at Evans High School, there's been an increase in graduation rate. So while the goal is to provide resources and services, really another goal is to increase the likeliness and life chances and earning potential of the students that we serve. So we want to see students to go to and through schools, but we also want to see its impact on high school graduation, while also increasing the likeliness that students will increase their earning potential. They will have the skills and as well as the skill sets in order to participate in everyday life. Next slide. To that end, and to the point of this webinar, is we like to think about how do we increase post-secondary transition. Since 2005, there has been a steady increase in the number of students applying to UCF, but more than just thinking about students going to UCF, the idea is increasing the likeliness of them applying to post-secondary education. And so thinking about how do students apply either through a 2-2 program such as Direct Connect and or applying to historically Black colleges and universities, but we want to increase the likeliness that students are seeing college as really the baseline as opposed to just high school graduation as being the ceiling. And so again, the idea is to increase the impact of post-secondary transition as we continue to grow partnership. So important to the evolution and success of community partnership schools is really its impact on the community. We know that when parents are involved and when the community is more involved in the students, that it has a positive impact on the community. As can be noted by this slide, is that with the implementation of community partnership schools at Evans, we've seen a decrease in crime reports, but what we've seen is an increase in the demonstration of families being involved, of communities working together, and really improving the life of people from Pine Hill so that people are more involved and they're connected, because we're seeing through our needs assessment that people need resources, but when they know and they can see the involvement having an impact, we are now seeing a decrease in crime in communities. Now, when we think about student level impact, because again, as Robert talked about, it's about education being first, and we also think about student success, but part of the idea is thinking about what does impact on students, as can be seen by the data from OCPS ACE in Orlando, is that there's been a decrease in disciplinary referrals. Again, part of the idea from an equity strategy is making sure that we're deliberate and intentional that students have what they need. So when we talk about wellness supports, we're talking about tutoring programs, after school programs, as well as just doing daily check-ins to make sure that students recognize that the hub is a place that they can come to. We're seeing that students are now feeling safe and supported in their building. And they also know that when it comes to having food and programs that will go beyond the schools, those things are available. So again, wrapping around the whole child so that that child recognizes that this is a safe place and that success is likely when they can participate in their community partnership school. Now, another point to bear in mind is that, yes, we want to see students being engaged and families being engaged, but we know that we're working in the context of schools. And so student success and school success is also important. And so we want to make sure that community partnership schools are also reflective of teacher support as well as academic performance. We know and we've seen is that community partnership schools are providing professional development, they're providing student and family support, as well as the director serves to the point of that collaborative leader with that principal, making sure that they can meet the needs of the school so that they're seeing an increase in school climate. And so you're seeing an increase in teacher retention as well as academic performance. In addition, as our partners are involved, is that summer programs are also expanding the school year that make things more inclusive. And so again, students and teachers are feeling more supported, and you're seeing that increase in teacher retention as well as in academic performance. It is important to note as we think about school climate, again, we try to think about things as whole child, whole school, whole community, but we also think about the idea of ABC, attendance, behavior, course performance. And so as can be seen by this slide, is that there's been a decrease in suspensions because, again, students' needs are being met, and so wellness supports are provided, counseling, and additional support so that students can obviously voice out their opinions, they have support, and that they can, issues of behavioral infractions can be addressed, but it's also created an element where teachers feel supported, so you can pull a child out so that school or education or instruction doesn't stop, but students are getting what they need in order to feel supported as part of that process. I think most important that I always like to bring up in mind is that the return on investment. Part of the work that community partnerships schools are doing, in addition to providing support, is making sure that there's a value, a net value that's part of this process. So community schools are really, community partnership schools are an investment in students, but that return on investment is increasing social services, economic development, as well as community support. And so, yes, there's a cost associated with the operation of community partnership schools, but there's also an investment in the local, in the students, and in the community. And so, for every dollar invested, a community school net present value is there's benefits that are over $9.90. And so again, we are seeing a return on investment because we're investing in schools, and students are investing in themselves, and they're investing in their community. So one question, as I kick it back to Robert, is that we always want to get an idea as we're presenting to our local community, as well as more broadly, is really what makes a good partner. We like to think that we have the answer because we've been doing this work for a while, but the reality is that the answer for good partnership is really driven by the people that we partner with. And so we definitely want to take some time and ask that question to you, and maybe have you respond in the chat box, because again, we're always trying to improve our practice, as the center serves as a practice-based center that is really focused on student outcomes and giving people what they need. But we would love to hear from you through the chat box, really what makes a good partnership.
So please feel free to enter your answers to that question in the chat box, as Donnie shared. And while we're waiting to see your answers, Donnie and Robert, Jillian asked, are there any tips from you all about how to help students between the ages of 18 and 24 become more independent, while also understanding that family involvement is important to their success?
Good. So Robert, I'm like, let you start first, then I'll take it once you engage.
Okay, absolutely. I can, definitely address that question, not only from my background as a guidance counselor and college career specialist, but also from the motto of community partnership schools. I think first and foremost, one of the things that helps a lot with those students is, working to try to get their parents involved early, in the very beginning stages. I know for a lot of students, that aspect of completing things like financial aid usually is an obstacle to ensure that they're able to have the opportunities to pursue post-secondary education. And a lot of times, especially for some of our underrepresented populations and first generation students, they're kind of provided with the information to work through the process on their own, but their parents aren't necessarily a part of that process. And I think a lot of it is really explaining to those students that although you want to take ownership and, be an adult and be responsible in meeting the tasks that you have in order to meet that post-secondary education, having your parent involved will help the process become easier for you as you progress through. And also, especially with our underrepresented populations, it really allows for the parents to also take ownership of their own educational attainment in some cases. And with our community partnership schools, that definitely helps as we provide a lot of additional family and community engagement, allowing parents to increase their educational attainment.
Good. Thank you, Robin. I'm going to chime in. A few things that come to mind that I think about as we think about that age range is getting students involved in mentoring early, and mentoring, from the idea of one, career, also maybe on leadership, as well as in service learning. Then the other part I think about is the internships, is so creating that independence by showing and helping students to develop the skill sets around financial literacy as well as financial capability, while also understanding the challenge that might be associated with work, exposing students to things from one, yes, workforce development, community on how to vote and how to participate. And then lastly, I would encourage creating almost an individualized education plan so that students can begin to see themselves in context. I think parts of the idea of learning independence is that life can be scary, as we know now with COVID-19, and things can be uncertain. But when you have an idea of the potential of what could happen by having a plan, that allows you to at least take a step forward in your endeavors.
I love that. You know, one of the things that I think is so important about what you just shared is helping them connect to and see the end in mind so that they know what they're working towards and how their current actions, their current decisions, and quite frankly, their current education is connecting to that bigger future for themselves. So thanks for that. We've had a bunch of people chime in on your question to core partnerships, what makes a good partner. I'm seeing shared vision and commitment, communication, both parties understanding the goals and impact on the students they serve, on, let's see, great communication between both partners, and also sharing of resources among partners is another good one. I really think it has to start early. We're hearing shared responsibility between school and the business community, finding where there's shared interests and goals between both organizations to positively impact the lives of students and families, and consistency. Partners most often start but don't follow through with their agreement or services. Ooh, that's interesting, Tiffany. She brings up a really interesting point where a lot of times in the beginning of something like this, there's a lot of energy and excitement and in some good forward movement, and then the hard stuff kicks in. And that's where things can kind of slow down and people are tempted to give up. Do you want to speak a little bit to that?
Yes, I definitely. And again, thank you all for your comments and your thoughts. And it's so interesting that partnership is a long-term commitment. And I think from the center we talk about the idea of collaborative leadership, that it could take years and years to develop partnership. But I think it's important to think about it has to be mutually beneficial. It has to also be understood as that it's mutually transformative. That partnership has the impact on both partners or the set of partners. But it also is about how do we share and recognize that we're going to always have to continue to evaluate our relationship. And it has to have some firm commitment that can also be evaluated annually or however based off of that timeline. Again, thank you all for your comments, because we're always trying to think about how we evolve this idea of partnership and make it inclusive. And as Robert talked about before, is that we try to make that delineation between provider and partner, because sometimes people can be episodic. But when we think about community partnership schools, we want to make sure that we're walking alongside of our partners for a long-term strategy focused on a common good. Robert, do you have anything you'd like to say?
You actually hit all of the things right on the head perfectly. Well, I definitely want to go ahead and just, highlight out of what you said is that relationship piece. I think, especially in today's day and age, and especially with current events going on, a lot of times in a partnership, whether it be something that is, long term or, something that you're trying to develop along that route, we tend to forget about the aspect of it being relational, building, the relationship with that individual in order to help enhance the partnership. And I think that's a key piece that a lot of people tend to forget. And then that causes things to be almost business as usual rather than more transformational and, evolving to try to always enhance not only just the relationship, but what comes out of that relationship, which is going to enhance the partnership for the long term.
Yeah, great point. Donna had asked whether you were following the collective impact framework, and I believe you are, and a core
Yes,
tenet of that is investing in the relationship piece of it.
Yes, yeah. And one thing that we do, and again, I credit it to Dr. Amy Ellis, our director, is that she really has a vision of relationship building and relationship management. And we do what are called network calls, and we have director learning exchanges where people are coming together to share best practices, but making sure that everyone's voice is heard. And again, I credit her for really having that vision to think about how are we investing in people? How are we making sure that they're heard? And are we creating a space of we that shifts from a me and my to a we and us?
Yeah, nice. I love it. Elizabeth is asking how your model incorporates faith-based organizations. And if I'm remembering correctly, your four, core partners are really just the start. That's just the
Yes,
core group to kind of get it going, correct?
yes, yes.
Yes,
And
correct.
thank you, Robert. You can go ahead and take that.
Yes, correct. So it is just the four core partners to get things off the ground and get things started with, that understanding of the partnership being long term. But as community partnership schools begin to work through their planning stage and starts to develop their programs and services, a lot of times other nonprofit organizations and other community-based or faith-based organizations will come into the fold to provide additional support to meet the needs of the students in the community. So it's a process that allows for additional partners to come to the fold and really be supportive, whether it be a nonprofit organization that's not faith-based or a faith-based community organization or a church. So it's really inclusive in that aspect, as long as it's working towards the needs and the vision of the school to meet the needs of the students.
And to piggyback off of Robert said, oftentimes our faith-based communities are part of our operations team, or our community leadership groups, so that their voices are heard too. Because oftentimes, whether a principal or a leader or a parent are part of those things, but we want to make sure that again, all the voices of the community are heard, because people will need support. And so we try to make sure that it's encompassing. But again, a strategy that we think about using is that we resource map and resource and asset map our community, so that people are aware of what are the resources or what are the informal connections that are taking place, or formal connections, so that people's voices can be heard as part of that collective impact strategy.
That's great. We're kind of jumping to questions here as we're talking about the core partnership and what makes a good partner. So if you don't mind, we're just kind of diving into that.
Yes.
Rashid brings up a really interesting point about, your question of what makes a good partner, which is really around finding where the shared interest and goals are between organizations that can positively impact the lives of students. And I think that's really at the core of what you all do.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
And that
great.
really is it. I mean, that is about finding out. And again, we like to say is education first, and also making sure that we are talking about students, families, as well as being inclusive of teachers in the school building in the community. And so yes, it is about finding out what's first, but also being able to think about how we create a priority about the things that we will tackle, that they will tackle first. So yes,
Yeah.
shared needs and shared goals, but then also shared priorities about how you can collectively work together.
Yeah, great. If you don't mind sharing your webcam now, since we're jumping into questions so people can see you. James has a really, really interesting question here. With all that you do to create support, I'm sorry if I can read. With all that you do to create and support students through the collaborative process, how do you distinguish between teaching kids learned helplessness and becoming self-reliant?
I would say a big part of the way the model operates, as far as the programs and resources that are provided to those community partnership schools, it's more so from
You pause on this, Robert.
Donnie, you want to try jumping in?
Yes. Yeah, I thought we got to pause. So, so here's how I like to think about it. Part of what we're trying to do and what we always are encouraging is that one part of the community partnership school model is really based off of assets and recognizing that people are assets. And the strategy is, yes, to provide resources and support and a structure. But the second part of that is to create a platform where you're doing regular check-ins, you're providing resources that are ongoing, and you're really trying to emphasize the goal is to develop people's capacities and their abilities and their skill sets so that they are participants with the model and that they're not doing things to, or we're not doing things to them, we're doing things with them. So their voices have to be part of this, and we have to do annual evaluation and progress monitoring to see how are people doing, are people getting what they need, and more so it's an equity strategy as opposed to just providing everything for everyone. It's about, do people have what they need, and can we identify that based off of the individuals that we serve?
Yeah, you know, that really gets back to the core of collective impact, which is nothing about us without us. So if we're looking at how do we help students be their best, they are co-creators in the work. You know, they're an active partner in their own future with us. So I love that approach and the accountability and support. So it's from a place of love and kindness, but also making sure that they're staying on track.
Yes. And
Yeah,
again, I think
great.
that is key to a lot of the work that we're all trying to do and work together, is that we want to empower people and people to be the master of their own narrative. But as Robert talked about earlier, it's about relationships,
For sure.
because parts of relationships and parts of programming is, yes, we have to think about group thought and process, but again, individually, can I help and track and monitor the progress that I'm making on the individual needs that we're working with?
Yeah, great. Sonia just shared that one way to strengthen partnerships is to make sure that there are opportunities for multiple community partners to assist the school, not just limited to certain organizations.
Yeah. Yes, yes, and that is true, and that's why we talk about 4 or more partners. But another thought in that, and thank you, Sonia, for that question or that thought. You know, oftentimes we've seen is that most schools have a lot of partners, or let me back up. Oftentimes schools have a lot of providers, but they're not always tracking and monitoring its impact. And so one way that we're always thinking about, assessment and evaluation is that we want to make sure that as schools are receiving services, that we can help to support the school, but make sure that you're not just getting an episodic transfer of resources, but more so tracking and monitoring to make sure that all kids are being served, their families are being served, or that it's going to its most impactful areas, so that we can just track and monitor its impact along the way.
Yeah, great, great. And that kind of leads to, I think it's Venice was talking about the shared data and shared acknowledgement and measurement. Robert's back, yay.
I'm back on. I got kicked off for whatever reason, but I'm back on. So just
No
hop
worries,
right
no
in.
worries. We, in the age of COVID-19, we are all learning to share our bandwidth with the rest of the universe. So no worries. Rosalind has a question. Is there a middle school link in community partnership schools?
Yes. So there are elementary schools, there's middle schools, and there's high schools. So it is across the K-12 spectrum. And so, yes, there is a link for middle schools because they are participants as well.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Miguel says, I think partnerships have to be assessed from time to time, which is part of what you're chatting about earlier. Some relationships have to be fostered and even renewed. You know, Miguel is bringing up a great point. We talked about relationship building, and some of it is what relationships need to form. So that's some of those new partnerships, what relationships need to deepen, and then quite frankly, what relationships need to heal. You know,
Yes.
some parts of our community need support in moving through that healing process. So, you know, great point.
And I think also, again, just going back to leadership and really thinking about Dr. Ellis, is understanding values, because part of this work is about shared values. So as we enter relationships around partnerships, we also have to discuss shared values,
Mhm.
because some partners really may be episodic, but if you could have a partner that you have a shared value with, then that has the opportunity to develop a long-term commitment. But again,
Right.
I always want to think about shared values as important to partnership development and continuation.
Yeah.
Right. That hits it on the head, Donnie. And the other piece too is that it's continuous. I think a lot of times that when people first enter agreement, and it was mentioned earlier, at the beginning, it's really strong. Everyone's coming to the table and working together. But in the middle, it gets kind of shaky. And part of that is because there's not the continuous, relationship building. And that's a big piece. Just like any good relationship, it's continuously invested in it and working towards the good of the whole. So I think that's a really great point that was brought up.
Yeah, it is important, and I think it's one of those pieces that can sometimes get forgotten. We can focus on the work and the actions and the deliverables and all that, and yet if you aren't, kind of like a marriage or a family or anything else, if you aren't continuing to nurture and support those relationships, they can break down over time. Megan asks which this leads really well into her question, which is how do you get community buy-in? You've got school districts and some of those other partners, local businesses. I know in a lot of communities that it's sometimes hard to engage the business community or help them see the shared ownership and sort of what's in it for them. So how do you go about getting that community buy-in?
I think, and thank you for that question, but I always like to think about and really highlight the directors from the community partnership school sites because they meet people where they are. So I know people like Shannon Curry that is in Orlando, Mary Brown that is in Pasco County, and many of our other leaders, is that they meet people where they are. They'll go to homes, they'll go to churches, they'll go into the community. They will meet people where they are. And so the idea is not to bring people only to the school site, but to meet people where they are and help them to feel safe and secure so they really recognize that they're part of the partnership. And so it's not one-sided, but it is bidirectional or multi-directional. And so come as you are and make sure that you're connected and so that your voice is heard. So again, I would say is that our directors are phenomenal across the whole state because they will go to where families are and figure out strategies about what do they need in order to participate.
Nice. Yeah, and that kind of leads into a question that Sonia asked, which is how do you get parents to participate in their local community school when it seems like no engagement strategies work? And I know there's a community partnership school, I think here in Tampa, where the principal there shared, for all of us that are on the call, we love education. So we walk into a school, we walk onto a college campus and we're like, yes, we feel home, but not everyone had that great experience with their local school when they were growing up. And so now as adults with children, they don't automatically walk onto that school campus and feel welcome. People are using language, pedagogies, and all kinds of things that they may not know or be familiar with. So, what do you say to that? How to get parents involved and committed when prior engagement strategies haven't really been all that effective?
So I'll say, and shout out to Megan and Kylia in Tampa, because they're doing some incredible strategies around doing homework cafe. Doing meals and bringing parents in, 1 or 2 days a week. And so they're creating a home environment where parents can get what they might need from a school, but they have a safe place where they can ask questions on, my child might, have an IEP. Help me to understand, what this means. My child might need additional resources here. My child might be going through this struggle, but they create environments that are safe and where parents can ask questions. They have their family and community engagement staff reaching out to families and setting up appointments where they can get food as well as clothing. But they create these elements in these environments where families have value and parents can have the dignity to participate. But in addition, they may also do an exchange where parents can bring, if they did a barbecue, where a parent might bring something to contribute, where they're also highlighting the dignity of that parent, because it's our thought that parents want to take care of their child and they will bring what they can, but highlight that and celebrate them for what they can bring to the table.
Yeah, because everyone has value. Yeah. Let's see, Beth is asking, or she's sharing that, one of the components in terms of being a good partner is how involved the student's home support system is and what type of communication connection is there. And the reality is some students do have a great support system at home and others do not. And so I think that's part of where the community partnership model is so valuable so that nobody's falling through the cracks.
Yeah.
You can really
Exactly.
make
And
sure they
that's
have.
especially apparent with the family and community engagement coordinator that's at the community partnership school. We have some of our sites where those coordinators are there till 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, understanding that some of the parents and the families within that community, that may be the only time that they're available due to the work hours that they have, or even going out on the weekends, going to those faith-based organizations or those community centers to really connect with those parents. For a student that may need that additional support. So that's a really big piece of it, because as we've all kind of mentioned, not everyone's experience at school was welcoming for them to come back to a school when their child has something going on, or even they may only know that the school will reach out to them when there's an issue with their student. So a lot of our family and community engagement coordinators have tried to, change that dialogue by even reaching out to parents when their students have done something positive or when something positive is taking place. And just
Nice.
once again, like Dr. Hale said, like Donnie mentioned, meeting the parents where they are.
Right, right. Rosalind's
Wait,
asking
wait,
where she
Can,
could.
can I say
Oh
one
yeah,
more
go
thing?
ahead. Sorry. Yep.
I want to highlight what a principal said yesterday that I thought was phenomenal. The principal said we were just taking a pulse of what principals are doing around COVID-19. And a principal said, in order to engage the parents during this time of unstructure, as people try to create new systems, is that they were doing Friday check-ins with parent and child just to see how they're doing socially emotional. And so I thought that was phenomenal that the principal with their director were being deliberate and intentional to reach out to families to ask them how they're doing and to give them tips on how they might engage, whether it's a walk, a talk, or just talking or about how to play a game. Is that we were hearing from leaders about here are strategies that we are focusing on and bringing the families along through COVID-19.
Nice, nice. Yeah, that's great. Rosalind is asking where she can find a list of community partnership schools. It is on your center's website, correct?
It is.
Yes, it's
And
on the
community partnership.
website.
Yes.
Go ahead, Don.
No, no, Robert, you go ahead. I'm just
Okay,
excited about our work.
Oh no, you're good. I get it. Same here. It is available on our website. Now, to kind of ease the process for you, if you want to just reach out to me via email, I can go ahead and send that information to you, and also send more information about the website for anything that you need. That'll probably be the quickest way. Right now, we have the 26 schools throughout the entire state, and all of those schools have, their 4 core partners. And it varies from the elementary level all the way through high school as well. So if you want to go ahead and reach out to me, my email should be it's on the screen, robert.palmer@ucf.edu. I'll gladly share that information with you, and I'll make sure I get with Kathy as well to share that information to everyone that's on the call.
Great, thanks, Robert. We have, I think, time for one more question. Bridget is asking, with regard to expanded learning, are there any programs or partners beyond CHS that are present in multiple communities and engage in partnerships with all or the majority of the community schools, or are all of those relationships research identified, implemented by schools locally and individually?
Yes. So yes, CHS is one of our major partners. They have 18 sites, but we have YMCA, YLA. So we have multiple partners that provide expanded learning. So let me back up. Is that the nonprofit is the lead in the model, but at each site there are other additional partners that will provide expanded learning beyond just the nonprofit. And so you have YMCA's, you have other local-based community centers, you have local nonprofit, and so there is a plethora of partners. But again, our goal is that it is a place-based strategy that is driven by the needs of individual communities. So as Jarvis Wheeler would say, once you've seen one community partnership school, you've only seen one, because it's broad in
Yes,
context.
yes.
It's related to what are the needs of that community.
I'm going to sneak in one more question because another person asked it earlier, which is what metrics does the center use to assess the effectiveness of a community school?
So we have, to that point, we have a certification process, but we do have key performance indicators that we use. So yes, we want to track on a simple note, we would say attendance, behavior, and course performance, but we know that there are leading and lagging indicators, which can take up a larger conversation than what we have. But I would love to have that conversation if that person would reach out to me to talk about assessment and evaluation, because we want to make sure that we are definitely demonstrating its impact and we are good stewards of funding that is being supported by the state.
Okay, great. I'll make sure Jessica and the person who asked it earlier, I'll connect you via email. So with that, it's 2 o'clock. I want to respect everyone's time. Thank you so much, Donnie and Robert, for sharing. As we know in higher ed, you know, it isn't just a student who shows up, it's the whole person. The same is true in our primary and our secondary grades. This just makes sense. And I'm so thrilled that in the state of Florida, we have the support of your center to help our schools and our communities become more effective in this work. For those of you who want to learn more about the webinars, policy briefs, and promising practices that FCAN offers, I encourage you to subscribe at floridacollegeaccess.org/subscribe. And with that, let me thank everyone for logging on today. Stay safe out there. We hope you all are well. Stay healthy, and we'll all get through this together. Take care. Bye now.
Take care. Have a good one. Bye.
Oops.